According to the medium greenhouse gas emission scenario, by the end of the 21st century, Vietnam's climate will change significantly. The temperature will rise by 2 to 3 degrees Celsius in most parts of Vietnam. Experts say a temperature increase of 1 degree Celsius could reduce yields for rice by 10% and for legume by 5 to 20%. The annual rainfall will increase by 2 to 7% in most parts of the country. The Central Highlands and South Central provinces will see an increase in precipitation of approximately 3%. Sea levels are expected to rise by 57 to 73 centimetres along Vietnam's coast. The southernmost region, including Cà Mau and Kiên Giang provinces, will experience sea level rises of 62 to 82 centimetres. Estimates reckon that a sea level rise of 1 metre could submerge up to 6.3% of Vietnam's land, directly affecting 16% of the country's population if no adaptation measures are implemented. The Mekong River Delta will be affected the most, with 39% of land at risk of submergence, which would affect 55% of the population. However, this is not even the worst-case scenario yet, since it does not account for the impact of soil erosion. The delta area is extremely exposed and at risk of erosion. Statistics show that in areas where mangrove forests are in decline, erosion occurs 1.6 times faster than in areas with intact mangrove forests. In the absence of adaptation measures, most of the Mekong River Delta will be submerged for large parts of the year, costing approximately $17 billion in economic damage in 2030. The Mekong Delta is one of the plains the most vulnerable to rising sea levels in the world. Adaptation measures, such as planting mangrove forests to reduce erosion, are technically feasible. However, most measures to prevent floods, salinity intrusion and drought in the 21st century exceed Vietnam's current capacities.
First of all, Mekong Delta is the rice bowl of Vietnam and has 1/4 of the total population living in the delta, and many poor and vulnerable people are dependent for their livelihood on the agriculture and the aquaculture in the delta. Along with people, agriculture will submerge, the natural resources will submerge. So this is a hugely challenging issue for Vietnam.
Despite facing a number of challenges, Vietnam is actively engaged in tackling global issues and has worked with the international community to reach a global climate change agreement in 2015 to protect the Earth's climate and limit the global temperature increase to 2 degrees Celsius by 2100. Vietnam's intended nationally determined contributions, or INDC, indicate that the country could cut its greenhouse gas emissions by 8% using domestic resources compared to the business as usual scenario. International support in a number of sectors could help Vietnam reduce its emissions by as much as 25%. Key sectors for greenhouse gas reduction include energy, agriculture and waste treatment.
Cùng với sự hỗ trợ của cộng đồng quốc tế, Việt Nam đã triển khai thực hiện hiệu quả chiến lược, chương trình mục tiêu quốc gia về ứng phó với biến đổi khí hậu, tích cực thực hiện các nghĩa vụ thành viên Công ước Khung của Liên Hiệp Quốc về biến đổi khí hậu, tham gia có trách nhiệm trong các diễn đàn quốc tế về biến đổi khí hậu.
Since the first United Nations Summit on Climate Change in 1995, the international community has been working together to protect planet Earth, despite a number of setbacks. Vietnam is part of this process. In recent years, international organizations have supported Vietnam in the development of climate change-related policies. The Support Programme to Respond to Climate Change, or SPRCC for short, is considered a prime example of climate change policy development between Vietnam and development cooperation partners. Since 2009, the programme has produced more than 200 policy measures and mobilized more than $1 billion from Vietnam's development partners.
Since climate change, environmental sustainability, green growth are on their topmost priorities for the UN system in Vietnam. A number of UN agencies like UNDP, UNIDO, FAO, UN Habitat are involved in supporting various ministries. For example, UNDP is working very closely with MPI, with MONRE, on a number of climate change related initiatives.
As one of the countries the most vulnerable to climate change, Vietnam's population of over 90 million is joining hands to protect its beautiful nation from extreme natural changes. Using domestic resources and support from the international community, Vietnam's INDC reaffirms the country's willingness to actively engage in global climate change efforts and to implement the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change. Vietnam believes that its intended contributions are fair, feasible, and achievable.